Laura. Today we're going to be working on a yoga sequence to open up the hips, and this is going to be a completely seated sequence. If you have tighter hips like I do, you're going to want to get yourself a blanket or a towel, because that's going to really help to modify some of the poses, make it a little bit more comfortable, and especially a little bit safer for people who have tight hips. Let's come over and start in a comfortable cross-legged position. This is our Sukhasana pose, and you might already feel a stretch in the hips. If you want to grab your blanket and just scoot it right underneath your sitting bones. This is also going to help to roll the pelvis forward a bit more so that you can maintain that natural arch in the lower back, and that way we can keep the belly long. From here, let's take an inhale, sweep the arms up. On your exhale, fold over the legs. Walk the fingertips away from you. Keep grounding down through the sitting bones on your exhale. On your inhale, walk the fingers away from you. I'm going to come sideways on my mat so I can see you a little bit better. So feeling those sitting bones coming down on your exhale. Inhale, walk out through the fingertips. Depending on how tight your hips are, you may or may not feel a stretch in the outer hip here. But if you do feel that opening, just trying to breathe into it, being okay with the sensations that you're feeling. We'll take an inhale, walk back up to a sitting position, find that nice posture, and just notice the sitting bones pressing down into the floor. Then we're going to switch the legs to keep it even. Inhale, sweep the arms up. Upper body gets nice and long on your exhale. Fold from the hip joints to come forward. Use your breath. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, ground the sitting bones. Feel the pelvis pressing down. Taking one more deep breath here, just warming the hips up. We'll take our inhale, walk ourselves up. Now going a little bit deeper into the hips with our next sitting pose, we're going to come into what's called a fire log pose. Now I'll turn forward so you can see this. I'm going to place my right shin down on the mat and then take my left shin and try to stack it directly on top so that the shins are parallel. And I'm feeling really intense opening in my outer left hip for this one. So you might be okay just staying sitting up like this. If you need that blanket, tuck it underneath your pelvis. But if you feel comfortable, if you feel like you can open deeper, take the hands out in front and just slowly start to walk yourself down. As you take a few breaths here, this is an important pose to talk about knee safety when you're doing your hip opening. If the hips are tight and you start to force yourself into deep hip openers that aren't really appropriate for you yet, that twisting, that rotation is going to be transferred down into the knee. And you can cause some problems with your meniscus, with some of the connecting ligaments in the knee, and it can create instability and pain. So we really want to be mindful of avoiding anything like that. So one of the things that we really practice in yoga is to try and take your ego out of it and allow yourself to find a variation of a pose that's appropriate for you today. So if this isn't quite working for you, if you feel any sort of discomfort in your knee, I want you to come back into Sukhasana and just stick with that variation until your hips are able to come a little bit deeper. In the end, you're really going to be grateful for backing off and sticking with poses that are more appropriate, because you won't end up with those injuries that you have to worry about recovering from. Another tip, if your knees are a little bit sensitive, is to work on flexing the ankle. Draw the toes back. That's going to activate the lower leg muscles, and it gives a little more support to the knee. Now let's come up slowly and switch the legs. Taking the left shin, laying it down onto the floor, Taking the right shin, stack it on top. And taking your time to work yourself into these poses. Kind of fidgeting around, making sure that you're comfortable, feeling that the bottom of the pelvis can stay rooted into the floor evenly on both sides. Take your inhale, lengthen up through the center. And feeling your exhale into the right hip this time. If you need that blanket, that little extra lift in the hips, you can drag your blanket underneath you, or maybe you have a yoga block at home that you want to sit on. Check in with the right knee, make sure that it's comfortable. And then if you want to go deeper, maybe walking the hands out in front. If you do start to add that forward bend to your fire log pose, just be careful with the back that you don't start to round yourself into it, that you don't lose that opening in the chest by rolling the shoulders forward. Whenever we collapse into the upper body, it's going to restrict the breath, and that's the last thing that we're going for in our yoga practice. When you're working into these deep hip openers, the breath is so important because it's what helps to get us through those really strong sensations. And it also lets the nervous system know that it's okay to release that tension, to release that holding. If we hold our breath when we try to go into a deep hip opener, you're going to find that the hips are going to resist. They're not going to want to open or release. And as you hold here, when you take a few deep breaths, you're going to notice every breath, it kind of feels like you get that release. You can come a little bit farther forward. It gets a bit more comfortable. Okay, let's take our next inhale. Make our way up. Unfold the legs. And then let's bring the soles of the feet together to come into Baddha Konasana. I'm going to show you this from the side so that you can keep an eye on my back. And there's a couple different versions of Baddha Konasana or bound angle pose that we can do. So we'll start out with what I like to call the medium diamond. Look down at your legs and see that diamond shape that's made in between the knees. And we don't want a really long diamond, and we don't want a super skinny diamond with the feet all the way back. We're kind of right in the middle, nice even. And we're going to hold on to the tops of the ankles or the tops of the feet. Take your inhale, lift the chest up. And you can see how much length I got in my back with that. So maybe you're starting out somewhere around here. The belly is kind of rolled back and drawn in. And then you take that inhale, lift the chest up, roll the pelvis forward. Try to come toward the front of your sitting bones, and that's going to bring your natural arch into the lower back. I'm also trying to relax the shoulders down and lengthen up through the neck. Now if you're okay there, you might already feel that inner hip opening. If you want to come deeper, maintain that length through the spine. Start to fold forward from the hips. Every inhale that I'm taking here, I'm lifting up out of my lower back. I'm trying to lengthen through my belly. Then I'm using my exhale to try and relax through the hips, trying to release the knees down to the floor. And your next inhale, bring yourself back up to sitting. Now I'm going to use the blanket just for demonstration purposes. I'm going to hop my sitting bones up right onto the edge of the blanket and then drop my knees out into Baddha Konasana. And as I sit my pelvis right on the edge of that blanket, I can get that forward rotation a bit more. I feel like I'm sitting right on the end, and that's bringing more length into my lower back. This time we're going to take that really skinny version of our Baddha Konasana. So slide the feet back as far as you can, getting the hips and the heels as close together as you can. And you might be able to do that by sliding the feet back. Sometimes it helps to kind of scoot the butt forward. And then I'll take that inhale, lift up from the lower back, lengthen out the back of the neck, out the crown of the head. Now you might find an ideal stretch just sitting up here because we have the feet so close. If you have more freedom of movement in the hips, you might want to slowly start to come forward into that forward bend. Use the breath to come into this deep hip opener. Inhaling, lengthening. Exhaling, coming forward. Making sure that all of that forward movement is coming from the hip joint rather than the spine. Take an inhale, come all the way up to sitting straight. Now let's send the feet a little bit farther away from us. For this one, I'm going to take the blanket out. If you're comfortable with the blanket, you can leave it underneath. We're going to make that nice long diamond. And then for this version, we're going to take tortoise pose. You can actually allow the back to round forward. We're going to reach the hands underneath the legs, either hold on to the tops of the shins, the ankles, or the tops of the feet. On your exhale, allow your head to drop down. This is a bit of a passive hip opener because we're just trying to roll forward with gravity, letting gravity pull the weight of the head down. On our next inhale, we'll slowly make our way back up. Let's send the legs straight out front. Draw the right knee into your chest. And then cross the right foot over to the outside of the left leg. We're going to take the left arm and wrap it around the outside of your right knee. You're using the left arm to draw the knee into your chest, trying to press the belly and the inside of the right thigh together. So for me, I'm feeling this stretch right around the outside of my hip. This is going to depend on how tight your hips are. And then cross the right leg. Bring the right knee into your right elbow crease. And then take the left hand and hold on to the outer edge of the right foot. You're going to pull the leg up into your chest, kind of like you're doing for pigeon pose. This is like a seated pigeon. Slowly starting to rock the leg back and forth. This is going to help to release some of that gripping in the hip muscles because they tend to be so tight. A lot of times they're going to resist that opening. Now try not to sink back into your lower back. Try to keep that lower back lifted. Belly is long. Releasing that side, coming over to the left leg, drawing the knee in. Cross the foot to the outside of the right leg. This time right arm wraps around and then strong hug from that right arm to draw the knee toward the front of the right shoulder. And then this is a good time to check the alignment of the right leg. We always want to keep the knee and the second toe on the foot lined up. And whenever you're doing poses with your leg extended out, make sure that your leg doesn't flop in and out. Don't lose awareness of that second leg. Toes are always actively reaching up toward the ceiling. Taking one more exhale here, drawing the knee a bit closer, feeling that contact between the belly and the thigh. Releasing, taking the elbow and the knee together, and then right hand pulls onto the outer edge of the left foot. So if you're really flexible, you might be able to pull that leg all the way up towards your chest. We'll rock from side to side again. Now let's release that leg.